As you know, the third generation WRX is here, and I just had to come back and properly redesign the rear end of this car because since my first video on it, every time I see it, I see the potential, and I can't wait to show you my version of this redesign.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From website and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business.
But before we do that, let's quickly have a look at some of the spec and tech of the 2022 WRX. The 2022 Subaru WRX is powered by a 271 horsepower 2.4 liter flat 4 and adds a new GT model with adaptive dampers. You can get it with either a 6-speed manual, thankfully, which is fantastic in this day and age, and you can also get it if you want to with a paddle shifter automatic. It will go on sale early 2022 and pricing is yet to be announced. I was really hoping for a return of the hatchback version of the new 2022 WRX here, but it only is being built as a sedan, at least in the US. I'm not sure if any other markets in other parts of the world will get it as a hatch. Now, let's talk about this design here. So this transition here that we saw going from concept to production is one of the most disappointing ones I've seen in the last decade. And what makes it even more so is the fact that I know Subaru knows how to make a beefy, planted, modern and sharp Subaru WRX, both in graphics and the proportions. And how do I know that? Well, they've presented concepts throughout the years that looks absolutely stunning. My favorite is the Subaru WRX concept from 2013. Super clean and strong proportions with a clear Subaru DNA in the graphics. If this was the new WRX, I'd be happy, even though it is an 8-year-old concept. Then there was the more recent Visive STI concept from 2018, which is a more of an aggressive approach to the overall design than the 2013 concept, but it still looks pretty sharp here, a lot sharper than what's actually presented to us as the new 2022 WRX. Now, I've made a video on this before, and I did a quick little redesign of the front and the back of this new WRX in that video. However, this time around, I want to really dig deep and properly redesign the rear end of this car. This is the area with the most problems, and I'm also going to show you all of them in a minute when we jump into Photoshop. I'm going to compare the Subaru WRX, the production version, to the concept Visive and show you exactly what was lost in that transition. I see so much potential in this design and I couldn't help myself from giving it another go. It's too important of a car not to. So let's jump into Photoshop. Let me quickly go over the problems I see with this design in front, side and rear. But before we do that, I wanted to let you know about today's sponsor, Squarespace, and what they can do for you and your business.
One of my favorite features of Squarespace is the drag and drop portfolio builder, which makes it super easy to design with pre-made templates, and on top of that, they're already optimized to be viewed on any device. If you need a new logo, just use the built-in logo builder. Just type in your business name and you'll have a beautiful logo in no time. If you're selling your art or anything online, you should use Squarespace commerce platform to sell directly to your customers online with customizable e-commerce templates. You can even create your own membership site now with Squarespace, and this makes it so much easier to manage your online classes and courses. Don't make building your website or portfolio any more complicated than it needs to be. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/TheSketchMonkey to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain using code TheSketchMonkey.
Alright, so here we are in Photoshop, and this up top here is of course the brand new 2022 WRX. And if we talk about angles for this car, this is definitely the best looking angle of the WRX 2022, and this down here is the Visive STI concept. Now I know this is the STI version. They did a concept, I think, that didn't have the wing and was a little more toned down than this, so disregard the wing here when we compare the views, since this is the STI version, and I'm pretty sure that the Subaru is actually going to put the massive wing back when they come out with the proper STI version of the WRX for the 2022 model as well. But what was actually lost here? So I really like the Visive concept down here because it looks so planted and aggressive. It looks like a solid piece of car that is properly sitting on the ground. And all of that plantedness was definitely the first thing that was lost in the production version. This looks like it skipped leg day right here, and we see that the wheels here, they sit inside of the car. I know some of you are gonna say that that's what needs to happen when it goes to production, but that's incorrect. We can actually have the car be more flush with the side. That's what's happening when you see all the EVs today going from concept to production. It looks a lot better than this right here. So the thing that the Visive concept do well here is that it properly plants the ground. And how does it do that? It brings the body closer to the ground, and it also fills in the wheel wells with proper size wheels and tires. So how does it bring the car to the ground? It has all these wings here and side skirts that kind of pushes the car closer to the ground, because the further down to the ground we go, the more of a hug the car gives the ground, if that makes sense. And on top of that, we're going to look at this in a side view better, but you have the wheels really filling out the wheel wells here compared to this right here. And these black pieces here on a white car also is a bit of a problem when you have that and then you have black wheels as well. I've talked about that in the previous video. Quickly gonna show you what I mean here in the side view. And let's quickly show the rear view here as well, and the Visive concept down here. Again, of course, very beefy with this STI wing here. Maybe the STI wing for the 2022 model is gonna take some inspiration from the design of this. I wouldn't say no to that, but we still have some massive problems in the rear end of this Subaru Impreza right here, the WRX. And I'm gonna show you what those problems are. This is the view that we're gonna focus on in this video, because I think the rear view is the view that needs the most attention, and I think it does have so much potential. And I'm gonna show you what the problems are right here. So we have a too tall of a rear end, and with the graphic features here, they don't have any movement in them in the relationship between them. What I mean by that is, if we look at the height, for example, of the graphic feature of that is the taillights right here, we have this height right here. Then we have the diffuser being even higher than that. And if we want to have a car that looks planted, we need to have graphic features in the rear end that stretches out horizontally, not vertically. And that's the problem here. Just look at the mass of plastic going on right here, and also look at how tall these taillights are. So what I want to do here to solve this problem is to, first of all, we need to definitely reduce the tallness, the height of the diffuser right here. So maybe by this much we can remove this whole thing. I'm not sure exactly how much we're gonna have to reduce the diffuser in the rear, but probably something like this, because we really don't need all this plastic here covering half the height of the rear end. And on top of that, what I want to do with the taillights here is to stretch them out, so make them squintier. I did this also something similar on my quick redesign in the previous video, but here I'm gonna go into more detail, because as I said, every time I see the rear end of this car, I see that the car is actually, it is a cool looking WRX underneath all these weird proportions of the graphics, and it really doesn't need much to be a really cool looking WRX. And I can't wait to show you that in the redesign. Another small change I want to do here is to actually fit these tailpipes in this space for the tailpipes. Right now this feels like they're hanging down way too low, so just move them up a tiny bit right here and fit them in the actual space for it. But looking at the Visive here, you can see just how beefy these fenders are and the overall stance of this rear end. We still have this triangle right here which houses the tailpipes in the Visive concept. Up here they don't really house anything except for this little reflector piece right there, and the tailpipe sits all the way down here. So we have the top of the graphics starting with this little added spoiler here, which I'm gonna remove as well. I don't think it looks good. I'd rather have just clean a ducktail like this, and then I'm gonna add an STI looking wing onto this thing to make it look even more Impreza-ish, if that makes sense. And we have the bottom of the graphics stopping with these tailpipes. So have a look at this height right here, and this is what needs to be worked on. We need to stretch out the graphics horizontally and reduce the height of them vertically by just playing around with the proportions of them. And I think we can really make it look really cool by just making those small changes. Last but not least, before we jump into the redesign, just quickly want to show you the side view here. This is the Visive without the wing, and you can see just how much cleaner it looks. Looks more proper to compare that to the 2022 WRX, since that's not the STI version yet. We haven't seen that yet, but I still want to show you this shoulder line here. It does have some waviness to it, even in the concept, but I feel it works better because because this rear fender is more pronounced here. It's a lot beefier than what we have right here. Even though we have the same kind of shoulder line right here that dips kind of in the driver's side door and then continues up, and then it's broken right here, which is fine. It's also broken in the front end here. So I want to add some more beefiness to both of these fenders here, both in the front and in the rear, to have almost two shelves in the front, one in the rear, to just have some more movement and some more volumes in the front and the rear, and also that in itself is going to make the car wider and more planted on the ground. But what I want to show you here, the main thing inside view, is these black pieces right here. It just makes the tire and the wheel disappear, which I talked about in the previous video as well. Quickly just covering that here. It just makes the wheel look even smaller than what it is, because the black pieces right here, it looks like it's part of the hole in the body, so that reduces the size of the wheels even more and makes them look like tiny little bottle caps inside of a big black hole. So I'm not sure if, I think a different set of wheels and tires are going to solve this problem, because it actually works pretty well here on the Visive concept, even though we still have the black plastic cladding around the wheel arches. But because we have different wheels here that actually fills out the wheelhouse and tires, it looks a lot better, and overall the stance, the proportions of this just looks more solid than the current 2022 WRX here up there. And with that said, let's continue here and let's now start the redesign of the rear end of this WRX, and let me show you what ideas I have for it. And you're gonna see that there are not really major changes to the design that I want to do, just small tiny tweaks, and I think those tweaks are gonna make a big difference for the WRX. When I first saw the 2022 WRX, it felt like it was dated almost instantly. It looked more like a 2012 model or something like that than a 2022 model, and that's pretty frustrating because, as I said earlier, Subaru knows how to make an awesome looking WRX because they've shown us that in the concept. The front looks a lot better than the rear, which we just talked about when we looked at the front, compared that to the Visive concept. I saw the real car at the Miami Auto Show just a couple of, maybe a month ago or something like that. And one thing that I like to change in the front end would be to make the headlights just a little bit larger. They almost disappear in the front end because they're so small. Larger headlights would also help to add a strong brand identity to the car in day or night. The rear doesn't need a bumper anymore because we have, obviously, I mean, I guess a diffuser to fill that entire space, so that if you get hit from the rear, the diffuser is gonna take the hit and not some bumper. The black fender flares make the wheel, as I said, they make the wheel look even smaller than what they already are, like tiny little bottle caps in a massive black hole, and this becomes even more pronounced, as I showed you in the car that we had in Photoshop here, when we have black on white and the contrast is so stark. It doesn't help that the shoulder line seems a little bit confused and doesn't really know what to aim at or what to connect with, either in other lines or graphics. It seems a little lost, and I think we can adjust that by adding beefier flares to both the front and the rear fenders. I'm sure it's a fantastic car to drive. That has nothing to do with this video. The driving experience of the WRX is probably just as good and just as entertaining and enjoyable as it's always been, because they've always been fun car to drive. However, as I said in the first video, I like to know that I'm sitting inside something that's beautiful and doing my surroundings a favor by driving by them so they can actually admire the design that I'm in. And that's gonna be hard to do in the 2022 WRX, unfortunately. But as I said, there is hope. When I said this car has potential, what I mean by that is I want to use the existing graphic setups, keeping most of those intact, and instead play with the proportions of the rear end and also the proportions of the individual graphic elements of the rear. I think if we do that, we can still have it look like the 2022 WRX, but with a completely different presence and most of all stance, and that was the goal with this redesign.